Peace, family. Y'all know who it is. It's Dr. Bakari K. Lumumba, the progenitor of LumumbaSpeaks.com, a Black empowerment initiative where we believe we could gain a competitive advantage by always betting on Black. Back in conjunction with Beacon Online Network, the Pan-African social media extraordinaire, in the home of African-centered news and information. We have a great show for you all where we're going to be interviewing Sister Ekemini Uwan. Her article, she wrote an article back in 2022 titled Hidden in Plain Sight, a Single Black Women's Manifesto. That's actually the book chapter, but she actually wrote an article. So family, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read her bio, then we're going to bring her in. And please forgive me, sister, for butchering your name, but Ekemini Uwan, right, is a public theologian, international human rights activist, and co-author of the 2023 NAACP Image Award-nominated book, Truth's Table, Black Women's Musings on Life, Love, and Liberation. And I have that book right here, family. Got it right here. She co-hosted the award-winning podcast, Truth's Table, and Get in the Word with Truth's Table. Uwan is a 2022 Aspen Ideas Festival Fellow and a 2023 and 2024 Fellow at the Aspen Institute. She serves as a special advisor for the Aspen Institute's Racial Justice and Religion Collective. In addition to being an NAACP Image Award-nominated author for outstanding literary work, Ekemini is a charter member of the International Civil Working Group of the Permanent Forum for People of African Descent at the United Nations. Uwan is a reparations activist whose work spans the globe, as she has advocated for global reparations on behalf of Africans and African descendants on the floor of the United Nations 3, not 1, not 2, 3 times. Her writings have been published in The Atlantic, The Washington Post, The Huffington Post, Black Voices, and Hallmark Mahogany, to name a few. Ekemini has appeared on MSNBC in the Griot, and her insights are quoted on NPR, CNN, New York Times, The Washington Post, and The New Yorker, among other publications. As one who is passionate about theology, Ekemini has a fierce commitment to the gospel and its implications for issues pertaining to reparations, racial injustice, anti-Black racism, and white supremacy. Ekemini believes that theology can and does speak to our present-day culture, social, and political issues. As a result, she often speaks, opines, and writes about the aforementioned for various online publications. Ekemini's voice has been sampled on Lecrae's album, All Things Work Together, and on Show Baraka's The Narrative. She enjoys spending quality time with loved ones and working out in her spare time, as do I, body by, I know that's right. As a self-proclaimed part-time fashionista, she has a penchant for thrift shopping. Sister Uwan, how are you doing today? You're muted.
Let me unmute. I'm good.
Very good.
Thank you for that introduction. Thank you so much.
And it's Ekemini.
Yeah, Ekemini. Yeah, that's right.
Wonderful. I got it right.
Thank
so
you.
I know you on a time crunch, and we're going to dive right in, family.
Sure.
As I stated, I became aware of your article via Dr. C. Hassan Johnson. He did of course, reaction video, of course, to the article. And of course, your article was titled, and I'm going to bring this up for everyone just so that they can see.
Sure.
Righteous Discontent.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, right. Oh, I got to add it to the stage. Okay. Righteous discontent, why single Black women who want to be married are not more broken than anyone else. Black women are ensnared by interlocking social structures that render them single for far longer than they intended, with fewer interracial dating options, theologian and author Ekemini Uwan writes. So, of course, this is written in May of 22, family. I will put the link in the chat if you want to check it out. But so the question here, and we're going to get started, is one, what is a public theologian, and how did you come to such a profession?
Yeah. So, yeah, it's quite a question. So yeah, I was actually born and raised in California. I tell a little bit of my narrative because I think it's helpful about understand my social location. So born and raised, in the church, but the faith really hadn't become my own, the Christian faith. I want to be specific about that until I was in college, many years later. But I grew up on the pew and whatnot. But it really wasn't until much later that the faith became my own, and I really had my own personal relationship with Jesus Christ, the brown-skinned Palestinian Jewish God man. And so I'm grateful for that encounter because Jesus changed my life. And he is actually quite literally the center of everything that I do and informs all of my work, actually. And so when I was in college, I came out, I did business marketing, went into sales, did the corporate stint and was making money, had a house, all those things, right? All of the things. And it wasn't until the day before my birthday, I had lost my job. They got rid of my whole sales team. I was in pharmaceutical sales job at that time, making pretty good money, doing well, going to church, working, serving. Like that was really my routine. And the day before my birthday, I lost my job. They got rid of everybody. It was very traumatic because it's unexpected. It comes out of nowhere. Yeah, that'll shake up your world. And so I was just like, all right. I was thinking and praying like, Lord, what's up? Why is this happening? And just through praying and thinking about what the next phase was, I was sensing that the Holy Spirit was saying, ministry, but I didn't understand because I was like, well, all I do was spend hours in church. I was at a Pentecostal church at the time. So, anything about the Pentecostal church, you're there for a long time. So, so anyway, so I was like, okay. I was like, well, I'm teaching, I'm doing, I'm teaching people in the word because I like, I love the word. And so I was like, okay, maybe I need to go to school to learn more. Maybe that's why you did just go a bit deeper. And so feeling like that was a sense, of where the Lord was leading me, I went into seminary and I picked up my whole life from Los Angeles. I'm originally from the Bay Area, but moved to LA for college. Then I had been living in LA for 12 years, I think. Picked up my whole life and moved to Philadelphia to attend seminary, 4-year program, learning Greek and Hebrew.
What institution was that?
It was Westminster.
Okay.
Theological Seminary. And so I went there, 4-year program, didn't know what I was going there for, to be honest. I didn't feel a call to be a pastor or anything like that. And so I was like, what am I doing here? I'm just walking by faith. Maybe it'll come to me. And then Black Lives Matter, popped off. Actually, 2012 was kind of, when Trayvon Martin was lynched, and so I started getting pretty heavily into that movement and all that whole trajectory of that whole time under Obama and what was happening then. So I was speaking out and writing a lot, about BLM, anti-Blackness, state violence, and all of those things. And then people just started asking me to come and speak and talk about the intersection of faith and justice and all these things. And before you know it, this is the path, that was laid out for me, was in public theology. And so when I think about public theology, it's God talk in public, right? Making sense of the issues, pop culture, politics, anything that we face in these days, and trying to understand, okay, where, as a Christian, what is God saying about this? How do we think about these existential crises? Does God care? All of those types of things. Those are the types of answers or questions, that I help people think through. And I do that through writing. I do that through my podcast, Truth Table. I do that through getting the word with Truth Table. I do that through writing books, all of those things, contributing to books and all of those things. So,
and speaking of books, so what led you to write the book chapter, right? Righteous Discontent, Why Single Black Women Who Want to Be Married, or the article, which of course is a derivative of the chapter. So what led you to write that?
Well, so it's not really that deep in that the book was published through Penguin Random House, and when you're trying to promote a book, when the publisher wants to promote the book, they will they want you to write op-eds, right? So just to get some chapters into an actual national headline, so that it creates buzz, people buy it or want to read more. And so it's been a couple of years now. So I believe that they and at that time I was writing more op-eds. At that time the industry was a bit different with freelancing. It's just changed a lot since then. But anyway, back then, that was back when people were still writing a lot of op-eds, for different orgs. And if I remember correctly, I think it was the PR team that pitched out our book to different publications. And I think they came back, I think News One came back with an interest, I think, in my chapter specifically. And so formulated really, really just a condensed version of the chapter for News One. If I remember correctly, I believe that's how it came about.
Okay. So you in the chapter you discuss dating gurus who you are double-minded. What do you mean by double-minded?
Yeah, well, in that chapter, I talk about how some of the dating gurus will say, "Well, you need to have sex to keep the man, right?" Or no, don't have sex too soon, right? Or
Right.
you need to, you can't be a wife. You can't expect to be a wife if you're a girlfriend, right? You know, it's like, wait a minute, but don't be a wife yet because you're not one. So you need to be a girlfriend, and you need to show, or you need to submit. And there's just a lot of double talk. You know what
Right.
I mean? It's a lot of double talk. It's like one person says one thing, or that same person saying the same thing, and then a month later they're changing their mind
They're
and
saying
say, "No,
something completely
do
different.
it this way," right? And so that's what I mean. You know, when I say when I talk about double-mindedness, right? And so it's like, wait a minute, which one is it? Is it Uchi Wally or One Mike? I know I'm dating
Right.
myself,
Right.
but I mean,
Okay. All right, Jay-Z. You're a Nas fan. You better stop it.
I'm a, I am a, you
Leave
know,
him alone, right?
no, but you know what I'm saying? It was like, which one
Yes,
is it? Which one?
absolutely.
What y'all want? You know. So
Right.
anyway,
So let me ask you this,
yeah.
and I'm gonna ask you, kind of, throw some names out there.
Yeah.
Who are these dating gurus?
Yeah, so I feel like there's been some generational shifts. I think
Mhm,
when I earlier in the article when I was talking about that frenzy in the early 2000s, it was
mhm.
definitely Steve Harvey.
Yes.
That was definitely one. I would say even some pastors, right? Even
Mm,
that kind of threw some of those little things out. So like even at TD Jakes and like oh my gosh, John Gray, I think
okay.
is his name, would sometimes throw that stuff out. And then there was also Kevin Samuels, of course. Who else? There were some others, and then there's also people just in the YouTube verse, which I will say, I'll admit, I'm not in the YouTube universe,
You're not in
but
the YouTube streets, right?
I'm not. I'm really not. But the ones I'm talking about, your feminine energy and your masculine energy, and I'm like, oh my goodness, it's a lot. Like
Right.
I think it's just a lot of undue burdens, not just on women, but I think also on men in some ways, where it's just like, y'all, this is a lot. Like, this is a lot. And so anyway, those are some of the gurus that come to mind. There are others, I'm sure. Of course, then there's the people that are influenced by Kevin Samuels. So even though he's now passed away, deceased, but there's many that he's informed, and a lot of his philosophy is still permeating,
Right.
the YouTube or just even the dating zeitgeist.
Right.
Mhm.
So in your chapter, you state that your singleness is an enigma.
Oh, uh-huh.
Yes. Have you ever discussed with men why a courtship or situationship that you mentioned in your chapter did not progress to a relationship?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so I will say this was written a while back now.
Yeah.
So I do want to say it was maybe, let's see, a book takes a while to come out. So this was written. I must have written this in 2021.
Okay.
Technically, if you think about the book writing process. So 2020, actually,
Mm,
maybe 2020, actually,
okay.
or 2021, somewhere there. It takes about 2 years for books to come out. So yeah, it might have been 5 years ago. I can't believe that. But yeah, I also talk about in that book. I talk about ghosting, right? The phenomenon
Yes.
where people just
Cut you off.
completely cut you off. So there's some situations where the guys just I didn't hear from them anymore. Like just completely, I have no explanation, because I really don't know what happened. I ain't heard from them since. Then there are some who maybe didn't say, but there were some people where they were like, well, I think I found where they've said one guy would in particular would say, I've enjoyed our time together, but I think I found somebody, that I actually am going to pursue toward marriage, right? Which that's not a great feeling, but okay. And that woman happened to be much lighter than me and happened to be racially ambiguous. Like, okay, interesting. We have our preferences.
Mhm.
But when that's happened like twice, I'd say that's happened about twice in my dating experience where somebody would leave or say there's nothing wrong. And then I'm like, okay, fine. I mean, it's not great. It's not a great feeling, to have to part ways, but hey, I just trust, I'm a woman of faith. So I just trust that God knows what's best for me, and that's all right. But then you see them going with somebody that's lighter, you're like, well, what's going on here? And colorism is one of those things that people are not proud to admit, or sometimes they're not
Right.
aware. They're also not aware that they have
Right.
that, or if they are aware, there's shame about that. So they're not going
Mhm.
to say I'm a colorist, right? But I know from my own experience that there's been some of that. that has gone into play. The others, some of them, we had spiritual misalignment. So some that were just not, we just were not as yoked, evenly with regard to matters of the faith, and that's
Right.
critical. So those are some of the examples, if you will.
Okay. Understood. So you mentioned that you like to travel, work out, attend
do.
festivals, enjoy concerts, even attend academic lectures to satisfy your intellectual curiosity.
Mhm.
Can you share what you think a man that you would desire would want in a mate?
Well, that's tough because I'm not in their mind. I mean, I can, it's hard. I can't really. I don't think I can answer for them.
Has that ever been articulated to you?
I mean, yeah. They say, and they have said, like, oh, okay, like, oh, I love, that you move around. I love that you're, smart, right? I love your faith. I think it's admirable, right? They've said those things, but I think that maybe when the rubber hits the road, maybe sometimes it's too much. I don't know.
Right.
It could be. I am public. I have a public footprint, and I think that there has been some of that. I have had I would say one guy in particular who wanted to be, I don't know, who wanted to be the star in some ways, if that makes sense, and me fade to the background as opposed to us just walking together side by side. And so that's always a problem. And sometimes it felt like there was a competition. I'm like, I'm not competing with you. I'm not going to compete with my partner. I really believe in mutuality, and we're building together and walking together. But I think that sometimes people have not always done the work that they need in order to be able to be secure within themselves. And that's the work that I've had to do too, because of the ways that I've also internalized, which I talk about in the colorism chapter. The audacious perseverance of colorism is the first chapter of the book, because it sets the foundation for this chapter and so many other things in our world as Black people. But I've also had to do the internal work to make sure that I'm also secure, uprooting some of that colonized, thinking and internalized, white supremacy that led me to believe that I wasn't desirable or that I was ugly. Because
real quick, I would argue it. I wouldn't argue that it's white supremacy. I would argue that it's anti-Blackness. And the reason why I make that argument is because these concepts and ideas about Black people predate white hegemony in the world.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Yeah.
So I would argue how is Black female singing? Black female singing is traumatic.
Well, yeah. I would say the dating apps are pretty it's a lot. So I would say I have found that on the dating apps in particular, and if I remember correctly, I just remember just hearing a couple months ago. I didn't get to look this up before I came on here, so you'll have to check me. But I know that there is like a class action lawsuit actually against these dating apps for the ways in which they're discriminatory, and it's just I have found that I have experienced objectification on a lot of those apps. Thinking people are, well, I guess in this case, men, right? Because I'm a heterosexual woman. Black men sending unsolicited pics of their gender.
Gotcha.
Okay, so unsolicited advances, sexual advances, not at all warranted, at all in the conversation, not uninvited, right? Without consent, all of that. And that's very traumatic. And I would imagine very triggering if somebody has a history of sexual abuse or sexual assault. I don't, thank God, but that's, it's still not okay. Right. So those are just some very basic, or maybe not basic, but some very clear examples, of things that not only I have experienced, but also girlfriends of mine.
I've heard the stories.
You've heard the, okay, you're right, so
you aren't the only person to tell me this.
Yeah.
Is polygamy a solution to Black female singleness?
I don't think so. I don't think so. That it causes some real issues, and I know in my own family history that was something that our family had moved away from. Whatever, back in Nigeria. I mean, of course, generations, ago. But yeah, it could cause some real issues, in there. So I don't think that's the solution. I don't think men are more of a prize than women. And so I personally, I'm just like, why would I want to be one of several? That for me is not, it's not an option for me. I know other people have different views, but it's not for me. So,
okay, just asking.
Sure.
You discuss structural realities that seek to destroy the Black family. You discuss Diane M. Stewart's book, Black Women, Black Love, America's War on African American Marriage. I've written a book. I've even had students of mine read, of course, aspects of the book in my class on African American history.
Oh, of Dr. Stewart's book? Or
yes.
Yours? Okay.
Yes. What are some of those structural realities that Dr. Stewart speaks of?
Yeah. So some of the structural realities is that she lifts up, of course, mass, incarceration.
Mass incarceration, yes.
Yeah, and she lifts up, the war on drugs, as well. Of course, also the way the welfare system was set up in such that it actually broke up. The Black, two-parent household. Those are some of the things that she lifted up in that book. And I was grateful. I'm grateful for that book because it really helped me. Because there were sometimes you're just thinking like, am I imagining these? Am I imagining these things? Am I tripping? Is it just me that feels like this situation is beyond me, or outside of me, outside of just doing your own internal work, which everybody has to do. I believe in everybody having to do that. And so anyway, I'm grateful for that book and her insight, particularly as she has Jamaican roots. I thought that was interesting too, as somebody who's like first gen and contending with that.
Right.
So,
but one of my students and a sister from Ghana, she disagreed, right, with much of her, of course, her opinion in the book, particularly if you talk about mass incarceration, right?
Okay.
And the argument the sister made was, well, I don't want my husband or the father of my children to be incarcerated. I'm not going to date or, of course, procreate with a criminal.
Okay.
And I said, you have a point there, right? We know Black men are hyper-targeted in terms of the carceral state, but we also know that only 4%, according to Amnesty International, which is the most reputable source of data on wrongly incarcerated persons, only 4% of people who are incarcerated are wrongfully incarcerated. So I would make the argument, and there are several, that if you don't want to have a loved one or your partner be ensnared by the carceral state, the best way to do that is not be with someone who's a criminal.
Yeah, but I don't know that it's that cut and dry. I mean, I know people that I grew up with that were impacted by the carceral system. You know what I mean? For simply having weed on them. Now, I mean, this was in the 90s.
But
so things.
It was illegal.
Sure. But I mean, yeah, it was. But I think there's a difference between somebody having some weed on them. I'm not saying I'm condoning doing illegal acts, and somebody murdering somebody. I think those are not the same thing. So I don't. And so I get the point. I understand not everybody. It's not a locked up. Like my aunt will be like, "What did you do?" Okay, my aunt has this little line to that song. But I think that something like that, I have just seen that happen. With people that I grew up with. With where I was in California, in the Bay Area. Now you remember that 3 strikes law?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so I'm sure you know.
But there was if I could, there was a reason why the 3 strikes law came into existence, right? And that was because of the rise in violent crime, particularly in urban areas, right? To where even the Congressional Black Congress was like, hey, we need this law because people were being killed over starter jackets, Barclays, Jordans. I remember, of course, I was a kid at the time. I'm quite sure you were a child. My brother had a starter jacket, right? He got a summer job, and my dad literally stole the jacket from my brother and threw it away out of fear that he would be killed for the jacket walking to school.
Sure.
Right. So
that was a real thing. Yeah, I'm not denying
I guess part of the issue, and of course we still got questions we got to get through, is the concern with providing care and comfort for individuals who are engaging in criminal activity, primarily against Black people. Right, the people who are being victimized look like you and I.
Sure.
So that's not someone I could advocate for. Right, there's something to consider.
Sure, but I think that I think about Brian Stevenson, Edie of Equal Justice Initiative, and how he often says that we're more than the worst thing we've done, right? So if somebody has murdered somebody, it does not necessarily make them a murderer in perpetuity. Somebody that has robbed somebody doesn't make them a thief in perpetuity, right? I do believe, in redemption for people. Now, I'm not saying, okay, free them all. I'm not a prison abolitionist. I'm just not, I'm not, I have comrades that are, I am not. But I do believe that it's a case by case, sort of basis, and I can't deny the fact that when I was going into colleges, the data shows that my Black male counterparts were being ushered into those cages, right? And so, of course, not all of it.
That was because the overwhelmingly individuals were engaging in criminal activity. Sure, and when you're speaking to someone who was a former miscreant, right? So there were times where I was being ushered into cages because I was committing knowingly and wantonly violating the law. It wasn't a situation in which I was a political prisoner or I was innocent. I was actually doing the things I was being arrested for. And the 96% of the individuals who are incarcerated are there because they actually are guilty, not because they were littering. We have to be honest about this. And I would argue these typically are individuals that you don't want to have in the community. You don't want to have around children. You don't want in certain families, right? Because of the adverse influence they can have on the young people. So that's something I disagreed with her in the book. On the book.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, but
you didn't write the book, so
nonviolent offenders. To me, I would say that those need to be evaluated on a case by case basis, and I'm glad that work is actually being done now. Right, that's happening. Or at least beginning to happen. I'm sorry, in some states to correct for some of the.
Right. And are you familiar with broken windows theory?
It sounds familiar.
Yeah, so it's a sociological theory that posits that when low-level crime is able to take place, particularly nonviolent crime is able to take place in the community, it brings about high levels of crime, right? And they used to argue if there's a broken window in the neighborhood, in a home, if that broken window isn't repaired quickly, it could lead to street-level criminal activity, open-air drug markets, and before you know it, violent crime. And as a result of that, there's a domino effect, right? You're going to have, of course, white flight. You're going to have Black middle class flight. That will lead to a dwindling tax base. So now you have underfunded schools where receive a inferior education that ensnares them to be trapped into low wage jobs. So we see that there's a domino effect here, right? So this is just something to consider. But let's get back to the questions. Some would argue, and Dr. C. Hassan Johnson made his argument that the structural issues that, of course, Stewart mentions in the book, mass incarceration, premature death, miseducation, etc., are secondary and maybe even tertiary to Black women, as these issues primarily adversely affect Black men. Is it possible to say that this is an example of appropriating issues that primarily affect Black men?
I don't think so. And that's because, in the words of Lucille Clifton, I believe that we are each other's magnitude and bond. So there's a symbiotic connection between Black male and Black females, right? This could be mother-daughter, it could be mother-son, it could be niece, auntie, you know what I mean? And even if not, we're still connected to one another. So what harms the other will somehow have an effect on the other, on the counterpart, right? If Black women are not well, then Black men are probably not well. If Black men ain't well, then Black women won't be well either. So it's symbiotic. And so I wouldn't want to bifurcate that in those ways. That's not to diminish, the direct impact, that Black men experience, but I would never want to divorce, ourselves from Black men in that way. It's just not the way that I think about our own connection.
Okay. You cite Stewart once again, stating that most heterosexual Black women in America today, whether parenting offspring or not, are single by circumstance, not by choice. The issue is not Black women not valuing marriage, but the shrinking demographic of Black men available for marriage. Can you elaborate on this?
Yeah. I know there's plenty. I know some Black women that don't desire marriage, and that's fine. That's their prerogative. And then I know many that do desire it, and yet they still remain, unmarried. Some of those women are open to dating outside of their race, and they are still, in the same predicament. Again, that kind of goes back to some of the stratification, of course, but the racial stratification, but also even on the apps, right? And so the way that they will suppress the profiles of, say, Black women, over against others, or they will funnel the profiles of those who are maybe not as stellar or whatever, toward Black women, and then push up the profiles of those that have maybe a stronger profile to others, and so there's even some bias and stratification within the whole dating app world in and of itself. But then just outside of that, in the real world, Black women tend to be, unfortunately, last chosen, right?
Yes.
And least desired. And so even for those, because some people will be like, well, you just need to open up, open up your options. And there's more out there beyond Black men or whatever. Okay. I mean, and if that floats your boat, go for it. But that is not that's not a magic pill. Interracial dating is not the magic pill. And that can sometimes.
And you tend to find a number of issues in interracial dating as well, where the person is, has some anti-Black views, and that's a whole nother conversation for another day.
But. Exactly. No, you finished my sentence. And I actually saw that a lot through the
likewise.
Okay, exactly. Particularly during that George Floyd.
Like I said, we could have a
whole nother
long conversation.
It's a whole other conversation. But with regard to Black men, I think that there are. So here's the thing. I think it is sometimes. It depends on where you are too. I think that your options can be better depending on where you are in the country. I do believe that, and I know that I've experienced that. So I said that I was born and raised in California, left there, over 12 years ago now. It's been a long time. I can't believe it. And I've been living on the East Coast since. My dating experience here on the East Coast has been significantly better, than it had been there in California. Much more options, more frequency of dating and whatnot. And for that, I'm grateful, right? And my choice and my desire is to date only and marry, a Black man. And so
who's a Christian.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, absolutely. Yeah. So that's for me. But I'm not persuaded by the other arguments that say, hey, if you open up your dating pool, then you'll have these options. I mean, that's not what I desire. That's not what I see for my life. And so I'm like, I want to be with a Black man. That's who I'm going to date. And if that works out in the end and that ends in marriage, great. If it doesn't, then honestly, that's great too. I really do just trust, I'm just living in a place of just contentment. I'm just, hey, if it happens, that's wonderful. If it doesn't, then that's wonderful too. I have a full life. I'm doing a lot of important work that I'm proud of, and purposeful work that I care about.
Okay. In your article, you argue that desirability is a structural issue. How so?
Yeah, well, when you think about the European, beauty standards, right, and the ways in which Black women, and I talk about this in the
colorism.
In the colorism, chapter. Sorry, I was about to say article. My chapter. I talk about the structural ways in which dark-skinned Black women, are less likely to marry in comparison to their light-skinned, counterparts. And then actually, it even impacts our income. I believe the article I cited says that dark-skinned Black women make $6,000 less than their light-skinned counterparts. So I was like, this actually gets to our livelihood, not only our love lives, but also our livelihood. And both of those things are very important, but our livelihood is very important, right? And so I think in some ways we can gloss over that and not actually see and count the cost. Like, this is not somebody that's just, they're whining because they need more self-esteem, right? Or they need, maybe, I mean, that might be in the mix, but there's actual real material implications, for dark skin women, and then of course there are those beauty standards, right? Of at least in our day now, it was like Kardashians, right? Who kind of made this whole, the whole BBL movement become like a thing. The Kardashians.
We don't They don't get any play over here.
I'm just saying that they, because
that's why I think it's important to be with a person who's Black-minded.
Sure, I agree. But the point I'm trying to make is, especially being in California, by the way, particularly in LA, huge, and so no pun intended. But because of who she is ethnically and the way that she was built, that kind of threw up that made that the standard for whatever reason, and people flocked and have been flocking and sometimes dying in an effort, to actually attain,
right. And those are body. Individuals, of course, we know who have insecurities with themselves. Sure. And I would argue, of course, aren't Black-minded. So you cite in Stewart's book, once again, that upwardly mobile Black women lack the opportunity for love and marriage within a socioeconomic group. However, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics belies that argument, as the data shows Black men ages 18 through 65 still earn more than Black women. What do you say to that?
Okay. I'm just okay. I know that I've dated men that sometimes make more. I've dated men that sometimes make less. I think that on the whole, Black women are still the most degreed up, demographic. And so and that has implications sometimes in relationships, depending on whether their partner is is secure and can celebrate that, right? And sees this as a team effort. But sometimes those dynamics can come up, into those relationships. Hopefully it doesn't, but sometimes it does.
Right. And we do know oftentimes, and I've even experienced this at one point when I was underemployed, that having degrees doesn't equate to a socioeconomic status.
Hey, hello. Exactly.
I think anyone who has a degree has been there.
Hello.
So what are the weathering effects of white supremacy on Black women's bodies?
Yeah, well, we could talk about, the maternal mortality rate, where Black women, I believe, are 2 to 3 times more likely to die, giving birth. You could talk about even as recently, now that there's been a lot of talk about perimenopause and menopause and how Black women go into menopause much earlier, than their counterparts, and the symptoms of menopause are more intense, and they and they're in it much longer, than their counterparts. And of course, we know about the breast cancer rates, how Black women oftentimes are diagnosed much later, with a much more severe form, of cancer. And so that's also why I work out a lot, because I just don't want, I'm trying to, as much as I can, as much as it depends on me, combat that. My father died at a very young age, and he unfortunately was the victim of medical apartheid. And so part of the reason why he's not here today, and died at such a young age of 46, is because of the lack of medical care, attention, and treatment that he was supposed to get within the hospital system.
Right. You discussed the overworn stereotype of the strong Black independent woman. You also briefly mentioned the stereotype of sapphire in your treatise. Are you aware of the origins of the sapphire stereotype? I talk about sapphire, and I talk about Jezebel, because I'm gonna get to that.
Okay, because of what I have also experienced on those apps, right? And so this sense in which people presume a hardness or a sassiness, right? A sense in which you want to put a man in his place. And I'm like, that's not how I approach my situations. But, people, coming maybe with, some baggage and some things, which we all, nobody.
Or their experience with Black women.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, their baggage. That's what I'm saying. The baggage from dealing with other Black women, right? Yeah. Instead of taking this person, that you're dealing with on their own accord, right? And learning them, instead of having that experience, from the past. And I'm not saying that there aren't not Black women that, don't, operate in that way. Of course, we're not a monolith, but having that map onto this next person where it's like, wait a minute, can I get a chance to just be who I am? And then you make your judgment, right? Or even being propositioned, right? Because of this image of this hypersexualized, Black women, right? So that is why I bring that in, because I know of my own personal experience with that, and of course others too. But yeah.
Okay. And so, there's a concept called ratchet feminism. We kind of talked about this offline yesterday. A great book to read about ratchet feminism. There's a book titled "When Chicken Heads Come Home to Roost."
Oh yeah. Dr. Jones.
And so I would make the argument that on a nominal level, these characteristics of the Sapphire and Jezebel have been embraced, right? Ratchet feminism actually posits that embracing these stereotypes, these essentializing Black women, actually is empowering. So I'm gonna play a brief video very quickly. You probably haven't seen this before. It's going to be an eye-opener. We did a show on ratchet feminism and ratchet masculinity, right? We talk about Hoochie Daddy show.
Zaddies.
And then we have a conversation about does this play a role in Black women being perpetually single?
Sure. Let's see.
So we add this to the stage and let's go.
Let's see.
Yeah. I could get mine. All right, here we go.
Nigga, baby, daddy free. That mean I ain't got a nigga, baby, coming out of me. So I'm ABORTING. On my way to the clinic, I forgot the plan B. Let's go. Bitch, I got murder on my mind. Let's go. Bitch, I got murder on my mind. Let's go. Yeah, bitch, I got murder on my mind. Let's go. Murder. Bitch, I got murder on my mind. I forgot the plan B. Ain't no nigga cuffing me. You can't put me on the shelf, bitch. I'm outside with the team. All these bitches having babies, but that ain't finna be me. Said he wanna settle down, niggas selling all these dreams. He got 1 kid, 2 kid, 3 kid, 4. Bitch, he cheaper by the dozen if his ass have any more. And I'm only 25, still got a couple years to go. I don't need a babysitter, cause this baby gotta go. It's a shortage on the milk, and them diapers be expensive. I ain't tryna be a MILF, so I swallow all his children. I got hyphy in my blood, so you know I'm big pimpin'. Niggas tryna fall in love, tell them niggas I ain't with it. I done took care of niggas, now it's time to care for me. Rearrange the alphabets and skip the L's, I'm a P. I be on these bitches next, they like Nick, I can't breathe. VVS is in my Cuban, and my wrist is AP. Let's go. Yeah, bitch, I got murder on my mind. Murder. Bitch, I got murder on my mind. Murder. Bitch, I got murder on my mind. Let's go. Bitch, I got murder on my mind. I'm BDF, nigga, baby, daddy free. That mean I ain't got a nigga, baby, coming out of me. So I'm ABORTING. On my way to the clinic, I forgot the plan B. Let's go.
So I don't know if you've seen that.
I have not seen that. So, who is that?
It doesn't matter, right? Okay. Tiffany, but and so this is going to kind of be rhetorical, but of course you can answer.
That was a lot. Yeah.
And I would argue that the embrace of ratchet feminism has contributed to Black women's singleness, right? On a macro level, we talk about Black women twerking at the slave castle in Ghana, right? We've seen videos of Black women twerking at grave sites here in America at funerals, right? The baby that would make a reasonable man say, you know what, I don't want to marry you. If you're behaving this way publicly, right? We talk about stripper culture gone mainstream.
Yeah.
Right. We could talk about the public and private normalization and contempt and disrespect for Black men. Right. I think what's his name? Rebecca Lynn Pope. She was on a platform. She's being interviewed and she says, well, Black women we're running circles around Black men. Why would a man with a modicum of self-respect say, I'm going to seek a relationship with someone who's going to speak negatively about my demographic group publicly?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, I think those are two different things. It's I'm trying to track. You're saying Rebecca Lynn Pope. I think that you.
Yes.
You said Black women are running.
She said Black women are running circles around Black men.
Okay.
And the question was about, well, why are Black women single? And then she says, well, we want to be with Black men, but we're running circles around them. And so that type of low level and disrespect.
I see those in some ways in two different things. Let me deal with that one first. I personally abhor the gender wars, between Black men and women. I believe, and it's not just my own belief, it's not just my knower, but it's there is some real social manipulation on social media that begins to that helps to foment, you know what I mean, the tension between let me say heterosexual Black men and heterosexual Black women, and that we actually did a show about that with oh my gosh, Isosa Osa, who is the founder of the Onyx Impact. She looks at the way disinformation, misinformation, and the way it's used and weaponized against the Black community online. So I thought,
and if I could, because I'm going to give you a chance to provide a report, but we've got 10 minutes left. One of the arguments that Dr. C. Hassan Johnson makes that it isn't just that, but also he argues that these views of Black men are shaped by public policy, years of public policy.
Sure.
He argues, years of public policy in terms of, resources being allocated to Black women, programming, so on and so forth.
Sure.
And that's played a role as well. So very quickly, I want to read an excerpt from his article, then I want to get your response. So this was an article he wrote on his platform. It's titled, "Okay, I'll Allow You to Serve Me." It was written February 27th, 2025. But he argues here, he says, the superiority complex of Black women versus empirical data, right? Truthfully, both employment and entrepreneurship has not offered macro level Black economic stability, particularly on a multi-generational level. And this is not accidental. Black economic viability has been under attack since Reconstruction. Facts, it has been undermined at every turn by policy and violence. You can lose your job or working for a person or institution in a heartbeat. Similarly, the overwhelming majority of Black entrepreneur businesses never make it off the ground. And without inherited wealth, much of the time we're starting and running businesses on fumes, even without brick and mortar addresses. These are all true. What Black men have been trying to tell Black women is that the only way we can do this is together, like our grandparents and great-grandparents did. But this narrative of you have to make more money than me, 6 figures to be worthy, your money is my money and my money is my money, stifles cooperation and trust, because we've made little headway on those two fronts in the last 65 years or so, considering gynocentric welfare, higher education, and white-collar employment options. The men have been throwing up their hands and sought peace on their own. Honestly, we drug our feet too long before getting to this point. He argues, so this was a video.
They're bad. They cheat. They don't care. I'm with the white boys.
My favorite thing about white men?
Nothing.
Right, so he talks about the contempt for Black men, impalpable. There's another video here. Let me see here.
Y'all back.
Let's see here. This is of course.
Just to let you niggas know, we don't need y'all. We don't need y'all.
Right. So he makes the argument that even now, when they make videos on social media talking about the value of Black love, they mainly talk about self-serving interpretation of traditional relationships where men provide resources, while they fail to mention even consider what they would reciprocate in kind. They voice that they want Black men to do everything, including shovel snow, provide chauffeur services, babysit, fight off strangers, deliver meals, randomly buy her gifts so she can show off to her girlfriends, provide so that they can quit their jobs, do nothing at home. This is what they think traditional housewives do. Anticipate her moods and preemptively prepare to make her feel good, perform blind-blowing sex, but only on her terms and time schedules, give unending emotional labor by providing non-advice-based listening for indefinite periods of time, buy her houses, provide sperm on demand if she wants babies, except that she may pre-plan divorcing you afterwards, only to hit you up for child support, even for babies you may have never wanted, cook meals, raise the children from previous relationships while they pursue other ventures, fight or attack previous baby daddies. He calls this pit bullying, buy cars, buy expensive jewelry, bags, and shoes, offer prenuptial agreement, free marriages, pay for expensive trips out the country, routinely take her on expensive restaurants, pay bills, of course, and be lovingly supportive if and when she wants to leave you arbitrarily. This also means stay readily available to take her back when and if she wants it, and abandon anyone you may have met in the interim to prove your love to her. She says, few men are interested in being anyone's temporary life raft, only be discarded the next time she thinks somebody has a boat. Right? So I don't think this is not representative of you, but a lot of the things he talked about in his article, I do a lot of work with Black men. They've shared these things with me, that these are their experiences with Black women. And I would argue that when I talk to Black men, they like, it's not colorism, it's their behavior that makes me say, I would rather just be by myself. The contempt, the disrespect, the audacity to ask me for money, and we just met. Right. And so I would argue as a Black man, 41 years old, I've experienced a lot of things that he mentioned in this article. Literally, not figuratively, not theoretically, literally. Like I've been part of black manhood initiatives, rights, and yes, I've experienced all of these things, right? And so I would argue that this plays a role in why we find Black women having the lowest marriage levels in this country, right? Part of it is, of course, having children out of wedlock, then expecting another man who's actually responsible to raise children. Most men that got any type of self-worth or value aren't going to do that, right? That's going to play a role, right? The pit bullying. I met a sister when I was working on my doctorate. She was in law school who wanted me to go fight a guy because she said after they had sex, he ghosted her, even though she was engaged to a white dude. Right. So the low level contempt and disrespect, the lack of value, right? Shaquille O'Neal, I mean, of course, he's an athlete. We don't like to cite entertainers, but he talked about his experience. You open up to a woman, you tell her something in confidence, and then she throws it up in your face and tries to hurt you with it. I've talked to over 100 Black men. I did like a pilot study. Every single one of them told me the same thing, to the point my mother even told me, don't open up to a woman because she will use whatever you tell her against you. These are reasons why men are saying, I'd rather just be by myself. Or there's a presumption that if they date women of another race, that maybe they don't behave that way, right? And I wouldn't say that's true, but there's at least a presumption, right?
Sure, yeah, but I think that there, even in that presumption is, I think, some anti-Blackness, right? There's not, or let me say misogyny, right? In that people are, what they watch, what they take in shapes them. It shapes what they believe. That's not right. I mean, I'm actually deeply disturbed by that video. I'm still stuck on that video. I ain't gonna lie to you. I mean, it's very disturbing. Like, you know what I mean? You're murder on your mind. Seriously? You want to kill an unborn Black child? As if our population is not dwindling? I mean, what's happening? You know, it's just like, what is going on? You know, that's one. Two, I think that we have, in some ways, really lost recipes within our community. So I'm not disagreeing with you that that's a problem. That's a big issue, you know. But I think that there is, I think, love of neighbor and love for self says, let me take each person, you know, for who they are. And I think
I agree with that.
I'm just saying, it's because I can give you a million examples of how other Black men have done me wrong. Right. I'm not going to do that though.
Right. But all I'm saying is, on a macro level, it will lead some people to say, you know what, I would rather just be.
And listen, and guess what? The same thing could be said of Black men.
Yes.
What we have to understand though is that who owns these platforms?
But I'm not talking about platforms. I'm talking about
but it shapes people. It shapes us. Being on this phone 24/7, Gen Z, this shapes us.
Well, but we're not talking about Gen Z. We're talking about people.
No, but think about it. What you showed me
intracommunally since the 60s.
Yes, but I'm telling you that you showed me the examples that you lifted up. Yes, you said your anecdotals, but you showed me clips from, I believe, TikTok, YouTube, maybe Instagram. I don't know. Maybe that was in there. But what I'm saying is that these platforms, they incentivize that type of content, you know, to our detriment as a people. These people really exist. It's not makeup. It's not make believe. I'm not saying what you didn't experience. You didn't experience. Absolutely. I'm sure you did. And I'm sorry that you did. I think it's terrible. It really is. But I think that we have got, at least for me, like, you know, I have such a deep commitment, you know, to not only believing that, no, there are good Black men that do exist. There are not, every Black man is not a womanizer. I just don't believe that. Every Black man does not have 4 baby mamas. Like, no, every Black man I know does not have children out of wedlock. I just don't believe that. Like, and I will not believe that. I refuse to believe that. I will always believe the best.
Right. Well, the data shows that's not the case. So we got 60 seconds. So let's ask these 2 questions from the chat. Is the manifesto your manifesto from a global perspective or an American perspective?
Oh, yeah, good question. American.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the second question.
Yeah, the colorism chapter though has a global
lens.
Because I talk about skin bleaching among Africans.
Right. So Mr. Sandman, he's from Philadelphia to Illidale, formerly your home. It sounds harsh, but women don't care how nice and how good of a provider. They just care about spontaneity and excitement. They're addicted to emotional stimulation. So I don't know if this is an
That's
issue.
just a comment. I mean, I don't think that's true I don't think that's true for everybody. I'm sure that's true for some. Women typically like stability, but maybe it depends on the age and stage of life that they're in, so.
Yeah. But what we can say, and once again, just based on, of course, the empirical data, we are finding a lot of women, not just Black women, but here in America stating, well, I don't want to be married anymore because I'm bored. Right. So we're finding that women nowadays we're finding this on not desiring stability, that is boring to them. I can speak of 12 brothers who had stable marriages, and a woman just said, you know what, I want to be a summer, I want to be, what's it called?
Hot girl summer?
Hot girl summer now. Oh, you know what, doesn't matter, we got 3 kids and we got a mortgage, and so what? I'm out.
It's terrible.
Sad. So I know we got to do a hard stop. It's 4:00.
I do.
Great conversation. Maybe we could do a part 2 and to get more of the community to come in and ask you questions. But thank you once again for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you. Everybody be well, okay?
Yes,
we got to love one another. We really do. Okay.
Right. Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye. All right, family. I'm going to put the link in the chat, and we could kind of have a recap on the interview, and then, of course, we would close out. So we could have a recap on the interview, your thoughts. Once again, the link to her article on News One I put that in the chat as well, so you can, of course, read that on your own time if you want to tap in and, of course, have a debriefing regarding the interview. I think it went well. We didn't get to all the questions, but she made me aware of the fact that before we would get started, she had to make a hard stop at 4 p.m. Eastern time. So, and we had about 3 questions left. So, but yeah, I think, as Dr. T. Hassan Johnson mentioned, of course, in his article, Black men are saying, no, we're not going to be in a relation with people who are just disrespecting us. And just because now you want to say, oh, you know what, we need you, we love you, then of course we can then couple. And I think that's the argument Dr. T. Hassan Johnson has made, right? He talks about pre-planning to divorce a man before they even have children. And then once they have children, that happens. I've experienced that, right? We talk about only to hit you up for child support, or expecting you to take care of children that aren't yours, or fight attacking previous baby daddies. This concept of pit bullying, right? That the relationship is only valued by what expensive luxury item you could buy them. The sister doesn't come off as the type of woman who engages in that type of thinking, action, or behavior. But we know on a macro level, this is a reality. This is a reality, right, that Black men are experiencing. I had a brother who is from Michigan, but he's halfway decent on a good day. And we were at the gym working out. He told me how he was trying to, he's looking to marry. He's dating his sister. And then she tells him, well, listen, I know you have 2 children from a previous marriage, but if you want to marry me, you're going to have to get another job and pay all of my bills. Actually told him this, right? So this isn't a social media driven issue. This is something that Black men are experiencing in their desire to couple with Black women. And we've talked about this before, but a snapshot reviews that this really is a Western phenomenon. This concept of discarding men, your value is rooted in what we like to call this concept and idea of what John Henryism, your ability to have your labor extract capital from your labor to provide material comfort. That's a problem, right? So, and like I said, this isn't something that is Gen X or Gen Z. This is something that we find has been going on since the 50s and 60s, and it's been shaped by public policy, the contempt and discontent for Black men. Right. So let me bring this back up, family. And then, of course, we close out if no one taps in. But we talked about this, right? This concept and idea of, right, we see this here.
Just to let you niggas know, we don't need y'all. We don't need y'all.
20 years later.
Man, we want all y'all back.
Right. And we tend to find this, and this is something Dr. T. Hassan Johnson talks about, is that when the younger, but then when they get older, oh, we want to cooperate, we want to get along with you. No, right? You're only doing this because it's self-serving, not because you actually care about me and want to build a genuine, functional relationship. right? And so these are some of the issues from a Black nationalist perspective, right? That Black men are saying, you know what, I'm not interested in being with particularly American women, Black women in America. This is why we find passport border brothers being an actual issue, because you know what, the socialization is different. The respect for men is different on the continent or in the Caribbean than it is in America, or it is in Europe or Canada, right? What we call the Western world, or from an economic standpoint, the global North. Now, these are issues, right? As to why Black men are saying, you know what, I'm throwing my hands up. Well, we're finding, you know, young men, 10, 11, 12 years old, that's talking about how they're being disrespected. I can call my son being 10 years old and wanting to go to movies with a young lady. He gets in trouble. His mom says, you can't go. He informs the young lady, I can't go to the movies. My mom said I can't go. The young lady engages in a verbal textual tirade, but she's talking about you ain't a strong man anyway. And if you was a real man, you'll be going, like, what are you talking about? My son was like, what the hell? Right? So we find that some of this is socialization, right? A lot of this is socialization. It's not TikTok, it's the home, right? If you're talking about gynocentric households in which men are devalued and their only value is the ability to convert their labor into capital to provide material comfort, right? This is why when you talk to Black men, they would tell Black women, particularly men who have any modicum of self-respect, I don't want to be with you because of the way you behave. It has nothing to do with the color of your skin, even though colorism is an issue. It doesn't have anything to do with the texture of your hair. It has to do with the way you behave, the way you act, the way you treat me, the way you talk to me, right? I did a show on K. Michelle where she says, well, we need to get married, and da-da-da-da-da-da. And then she says, well, you all complain about how we talk to you. Stop being soft, right? So this lack of care and concern for the man. So what he wants isn't important. And so once again, it's gynocentric, it's selfish, it's solipsistic, and it's self-centered. And a lot of men are saying, you know what, I'm good. I'd rather not be with you anymore because I'm not going to live my life in which I am suffering the indignity of disrespect on a diurnal basis. That is why. That is why. Right? So a lot of times when we're hearing these things, it's self-serving. When I push back, and of course she even admitted, she said, yes, these issues do primarily affect Black men, but she argued that, of course, we are linked together. But we find on a macro level and a communal level, Black women don't think that way. They actually promote themselves as if they're members of a separate race, right? But when it comes to, okay, now mass incarceration is an issue because I can't get a date. It's not mass incarceration issue because this brother's behind bars, right? It's an issue is because I can't get what I want. So once again, we see it to be self-serving and solipsistic in nature, which is extremely problematic, right? But the other issue is, hey, right? Don't be dating a criminal. It's not difficult not to date a criminal, not to be with a miscreant, right? And a lot of times we find women choose to be with a miscreant for the reasons that Brother Sandman mentioned, the excitement, right? The mystery, right? That comes with that. And of course, the expectation of easy money. We know criminals tend to not be very intelligent. And so this may be someone that I can, elicit material goods from, and of course, manipulate. So these are issues, right, that play a role. And in my opinion, of course, there's empirical data to back this up. When you talk to Black men, they're saying, this is why I'm going to date Black women from other countries, because the way these women act in this country is extremely problematic. I've even had some of my female students say, yeah, the issue is our behavior. It's the way we act. I had a female, and I said, well, you said it, not me, right? You ain't gonna give me lose my job. But she said, yeah, the way we behave. It plays a role in the fact that we're single, because men who have self-respect, men who are doing things for themselves, don't want to be with someone who behaves that way. I can recall when I was an undergraduate, there was a sister who was a graduate student who wanted to go out. So we go out to get a bite to eat. We're having, some philosophical, intellectually stimulating conversations on the phone. We go get a bite to eat. She's like, well, I'm about to turn up. And what do you mean? She's like, so she was behaving in an untoward manner. And I said, hey, that's a problem. I don't like hanging out with people who behave that way. She says, well, I'm going to be myself. I said, okay, well, you could be yourself by yourself. Right. And I left. right? We find women defending Black women's behavior of twerking at the slave castle in Ghana. We find women defending twerking at a gravesite at a funeral. Anything goes. So this is the type of behavior where, like I said, a man with a modicum of self-respect, any type of motion, right, is going to say, I don't want to be with someone who behaves that way. Because when you're in a relationship, you're not just representing yourself, you're also representing me, right? So I would argue, and I've had conversations with, family members about this, where they say, yeah, I mean, it's not colorism, it's not misogynoir, right? It's the behavior that plays a role in why we choose to be by ourselves, right? My uncle told me a situation where he makes really good money, 6 figures, almost $2,000, $200K a year. He tells me that he has a situation in which he has a young lady he's seeing. She moves in with him for a period of time, and he's paying for everything and says to her, hey, listen, I would like for you to vacuum the floor while I'm gone at work. So she doesn't touch the vacuum. He gets home, hadn't touched the vacuum. And then when he comes home and says, hey, why didn't you vacuum? She says she curses him out in his own home. And even though he's paying all the bills, he said to myself, oh, she has to leave. There's no way I'm going to be with someone, right, who behaves that way. Yeah. So the normalizing disrespect, right? And this is going on a macro level, right? I'm taking care of you, I'm providing for you, and you're disrespecting me. Yeah, I've experienced it. Where brothers are going to say, you know what? I'd rather go somewhere else.
I didn't understand that.
I'd rather go somewhere else or be by myself, right? So I would argue that these are the issues. And what tends to happen is when these conversations are taking place, a lot of times sisters are tone deaf. This sister didn't appear to be tone deaf, but they're tone deaf. And what it comes down to is just solipsism. There isn't a care or concern about what the men want. It's all about what they want. We're supposed to just, fit into their fairy tale life, right? And so men want to feel valued. Men want to feel that they're important. They want to be, cared about, right? Just like anyone. I remember I had a sister tell me, she said, I didn't even know men had feelings. Wow. And she had a son, right? So this isn't something that is just being promoted by social media. I would argue that argument plays a role in the lack of agency, a lack of accountability. No, these are real people saying these things in real time. It's just being captured, right? And like I said, men with a modicum of self-respect saying, I'm not going to be with you because I see how you behave. If you're behaving that way publicly, what in the French toast are you going to do behind closed doors? So these are things to consider. But once again, this concept that you have to make 6 figures to be worthy of me. Your money is my money and my money is my money, right? It stifles cooperation and trust, right? Black men have instead sought alignment with women who don't have that collective philosophy or are going monk altogether, as the contempt and misandry from many Black women has become too extreme, arguably becoming a feature of Black women's social culture, right? Job insecurity, right? He argues, even now, when they make videos on social media talking about the value of Black love, right? It typically is a self-serving interpretation of traditional relationships where men provide resources while they fail to mentionally consider what they would reciprocate in kind, right? Respectfully, I wasn't able to get to this. When I read the article, read the book chapter, there was never a conversation about what the man would get in return. It was just about what she wanted. They voiced that they want Black men to do everything, including shovel snow, provide chauffeur services, babysit, fight off strangers, deliver meals, randomly buy her gifts she can show off to her girlfriends, provide so they can quit their jobs and do nothing at home. This is what they think traditional housewives do. Anticipate her moods and preemptively prepare to make her feel good, perform mind-blowing sex, but only on her terms and her time schedules. Give unending emotional labor, providing non-advice-based listening for indefinite periods of time. Buy her houses. Provide sperm on demand if she wants babies. Accept that they may have pre-planned divorcing you afterwards, only to hit you up for child support. Even for babies you may have never wanted. cook meals, raise their children from previous relationships while they pursue ventures, fight or attack previous baby daddies, as Dr. T. Hassan Johnson calls pit bullying, buy cars, buy expensive jewelry, bags, and shoes, offer prenuptial agreement-free marriages, pay for expensive trips out the country, routinely take her to expensive restaurants, pay bills, of course, and be lovingly supportive if and when she wants to leave you arbitrarily. This also means stay readily available to take her back when and if she wants it, and abandon anyone you may have met in the interim to prove your love to her, right? So I wanted to play this video where Dr. C. Hassan Johnson is responding to, he gives his critique of the article. I couldn't play this for her, so hopefully we do a part 2, but I'm gonna play it for you all. Fair use, fair use, fair use.
To me like crying about how Black men's systemic trials merely hamper women's dating options. This smacks of how inconvenient a Black man's incarceration or death makes a Black woman's prospects for being taken to a nice steak restaurant. It sounds inauthentic, narcissistic, and self-absorbed, and I'm tired of it. I'm sick of decades of such reporting of Black men's systemic struggles being watered down through the annoying and inconvenient impact it has on women's dating and mating woes. It's incredibly dismissive and pandering at best, and diabolically misandric at worst. We don't just exist to be boyfriends and sperm donors, stepfathers and unpaid bodyguards, or worse yet, mannequin-like props to be used in her lifelong imagined wedding, the wedding she opts for over the actual marriage, because she never actually wanted to be married in the first place. She just wanted the white dress, the ceremony, and the ring, with him footing the bill, by the way, right? And when the divorce comes, fellas, that's just incidental, right? That's nothing to be taken seriously. Black women are ensnared by interlocking social structures that render them single for far longer than they intend, with fewer interracial dating options, she says. And then she continues on, about sharing her story. But my response to this is essentially that this is ridiculous and it's arrogant. And the one thing I will say that this article has added to the decades-long maligning of Black men and misreporting of our experiences, she actually appropriates Black men's structural issues, and she makes it about Black women. That's the interesting thing about this article. This is the only new component that I've seen added to this decades-long narrative of Black women struggling, right, in relation to dating and mating. Again, we haven't asked Black men shit. And when Black men started speaking up, there was all kinds of rage about what they had to say, which she only, dismisses without even addressing with any kind of particularity or specificity. But the one thing she did add is to now fully appropriate the structural issues that first impact Black men without acknowledging that it impacts them, without empathizing that it impacts them, without even talking about the structural reasons it impacts them. Shout out to Jim Sidanius. She absorbs them and appropriates them and makes them Black women's bane of existence. And yet Black men are still somehow responsible. It is the game that's being played. This is why this article is posted on News One and not just on her blog somewhere. But anyway, this is the kind of bullshit we up against. And that's why I entitled this video, "We Die, But They Can't Date." Because that's essentially how this is being reported. The issues that affect Black men in a very realistic way, that had over 1.5 million Black men missing a couple of years ago, is now conveniently portrayed by Black women in media as inconvenient to her dating options. Anyway, look forward to hearing what y'all have to think about this. Hope y'all are well. Peace.
All right, family. So listen, tap in. The link is in the description. The link is in the chat. Tap in, be part of the conversation. I want to hear what you all think about the interview. And then, of course, Dr. T. Hassan Johnson's thoughts regarding the article, right? I think he was spot on. And of course, I asked that question to her, that this is appropriation. She says, no, we are linked together. But then, of course, later she did say this: these issues do primarily affect Black men. But that wasn't mentioned, of course, in the article or in the book, that these are issues that primarily affect Black men in a actual material way. That wasn't discussed at all. So when he talks about it being arrogant, when he talks about it being solipsistic, of course, I think he's on point there. But in the appropriation, of course, of Black men's issues. If you all haven't, please get the book, Solutions for Anti-Black Misandry, Black Flat Blackness and Black Male Death, The Black Master's Turn by Dr. T. Hassan Johnson. Many of you who watch the channel know I interviewed him last October regarding, of course, his book. But one of the issues that we find, and he talks about this, the fifth form of anti-Black misandry in chapter 3 is appropriation, right? That individuals will appropriate issues that primarily affect Black men and then make it about themselves. So definitely tap in, family. The link is in the description. The link is in the chat. Tap in, be part of the conversation. I want to hear what you all have to think, what you all have to say, your thoughts regarding the interview, and of course, Dr. T. Hassan Johnson's thoughts regarding the article. And then, of course, we could close out. But just once again, family, if you're watching, make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. And please be a blessing to the show. Support the channel here at, of course, Lumumba Speaks. As you know, you can always hit us up, Cash App, Lumumba Speaks, at Venmo, B Lumumba. And of course, you can hit the super chat as well. Mr. Sandman, what's the word?
Hey, what's the word? Happy Pan-African Wednesday.
Happy Pan-African Wednesday, brother.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, brother. Yeah, I had caught the tail end of that conversation, but I did hear what Dr. T. Hassan Johnson was talking about. I've heard him speak on that topic on a few different occasions. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it sounds like to me like the person that you're describing, and not to like broadly accuse all Black women of being this way or all women in general of being this way.
You can't do that.
Yeah, it sounds like the person that you're describing has like some type of psychological issues. Have you ever heard of narcissism?
Yes, and that's the argument Dr. T. Hassan Johnson made. He said that this reeks of narcissism.
Right. Yeah.
Right. I mean, just for example, let's say, and we are brothers from a racial standpoint, even from an ideological standpoint. But let's say we were actually blood brothers, right?
Uh-huh.
And let's say you're my brother. We're outside as kids playing in the street, right? And you get hit by a car, and as a result, you have to have half of your leg amputated, right? But then I'm going around making an issue about me and the fact that I had to live with a brother who has an amputated leg rather than the individual, my brother, who actually has an amputated leg.
Yeah.
That's narcissism.
Yeah. Well, if you do, I've done a little bit of research into narcissism, and if you look really deep into it, it's even more heinous than that. Even that description, they say it's like really close to being a psychopath.
Well, yeah, they are. Well, they are that one of the DSM definition or criteria for a narcissist is the person lacks empathy.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're saying that they lack empathy, and they're insecure, and they use they'll use anything in their means to gaslight or to accuse people of things just so they can have control of them, because they feel like if they're out of control of the situation that, you know, that person's going to leave them, or if they're out of control of the situation that, you know, the person will realize that they're just really insecure or weak, and then they might decide that they're going to leave them that way as well. So a lot of it's like based in insecurity and lack of empathy, and they're smart enough to they have a tendency to really read you, spend a lot of time reading you and paying attention to you to find out what get you going, or what gets you angry, or would it get you emotionally involved, and then they like to push those buttons to see if they can still control you with it. So
right. So and real quick, I didn't get to ask this question. Hopefully, we'll do a part 2 because one of the things she mentions in the book chapter was that she argues that she cites the Bible as a source of hope in finding marriage and love. And she asked the question, which is a rhetorical question: does God love Black women? And she identifies the story of Hagar in the Bible, and she says Hagar was my ancestor, an example of that God loves Black women. And I even made her aware of this, yesterday via email, that perspective is extremely problematic for several reasons. One, Hagar, according to the story, was a slave, right? But the second issue was the fact that this is a mythological story. It's not actual history. And you're identifying this person as your ancestor when the person never existed, right? And I said the second issue was, have you ever sought any African-centered perspectives on the issue of love and relationships?
Yeah, that's
right. Because that's an Abrahamic perspective, not an African-centric perspective.
Right. Yeah.
But I couldn't get to that because she, like I said, she made me aware of the fact that she had to do a hard stop at 4 p.m. Eastern time. And so we couldn't go over. But I would argue that an issue was the fact that, once again, one, this isn't actual history, it's mythology, right? Two, right, I would argue, you're a Black woman, you want to be with Black men, you may need to operate from an African-centered frame of reference, not an Abrahamic one. And the reason why is because we know Christians, of course she's a Christian, have the highest divorce rate in this country. So we know that's not working, right? It's not working if you want to have a long-lasting marriage. It's not working.
Right. Yeah, I mean, a lot of like ancient historians will tell you that Jesus did exist, whether or not he was the son.
But the story of Hagar is relation to Abraham and Sarah, and we know Abraham was a mythological person. I mean, even Jewish scholars have admitted that Abraham was a mythological figure that did not exist.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's what I'm referencing. And so Abraham had Hagar, he had a son Ishmael, and then he had his son Isaac with Sarah, according to the biblical narrative. And Sarah had an issue with Hagar hanging around, and so she had them become vagabonds. And the story goes that Hagar prayed to the Abrahamic God, and he said, okay, I will make a great nation of your son. And he actually created like some type of creek where they could drink water. And the narrative from an Islamic perspective, and you know this, is that Ishmael is the patriarch of Abraham, of Arab people.
Oh, okay. Yeah, right, yeah.
But once again, this is all mythology, right? And it's not even African mythology.
No.
You see what I'm saying? So it's like, if we're going to operate from a perspective, let's operate from an African-centered perspective, not a perspective that centers someone else's culture.
Yeah, it's almost like, I don't know, they just love that victim mentality or something like that, to that effect. I don't know. It's like, I don't know if it's the victim mentality or if they just love the drama, that the feeling of being, in the bad situation or something, the drama of it. Because you know that guy Tyler Perry, it's like every movie he makes is always about a Black woman in a dramatic, theatrical sense. And
that's why, I don't mean to cut you off, but that's why I pushed back when she said, well, Black women, we want structure. I said, you may want structure, but on a macro level, we're not seeing this. Right? You had women calling into Kevin Samuel's show, think you could think what you want of him, stating publicly, I was married. My ex-husband was a great father and a good husband, but I broke up with him anyway because I wanted to have fun.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, it was boring. We see women going out on TikTok, right? And you might say, okay, the algorithms are playing games, but these are real people in real time saying these things, that having a family is boring.
Yep.
So men are wise up and saying, why would I even take the chance?
Yeah. Well, would you say that if you went to like one of the Muslim countries in the Middle East, do you think their women are as belligerent as the American women are?
Not. Of course not. And so the issue is, and this is, like I said, when we talk about Black women's singleness, they don't focus on the primary issue. Their behavior. That's the primary issue. It's the behavior.
Yeah, it's like they have so much freedom in the American culture.
Right. I've seen there are sisters that I've met before who were cool, right? but they were socially awkward, or they weren't very feminine.
Yeah.
Right? That's going to play a role. Or they weren't good in the home. They couldn't cook and clean. And I'm not saying that's all a woman does, but most men are going to say, I want to be with someone who can put together a good meal.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So the actual issues, like I said, because they, like Dr. T. Hassan Johnson said, they don't talk to Black men. On the macro, they don't ask the man, okay, well, what is the issue? And if you say these are things I want, well, you don't have a right to have a perspective. You're just being patriarchal and misogynistic. So once again, dismissing your concerns, what you want, which is what he talked about. The relationships tend to be self-serving.
Right. Well, another issue that we're having, if we're like going to, accuse the feminist movement of causing so much trouble in a Black family is with so many Black women in today's world in the United States being unmarried. Like if you are married to a Black woman, most of her friends are going to be single women, and
Right.
they're going to influence her to act in the fashion that they're acting.
Right.
And
In
they
a manner
might be
that
like,
isn't conducive to having a healthy relationship. Absolutely.
yeah,
Matter of fact, I had a former student come in today, and we was talking, and she was like, yeah, I hope one day, I have children. And I'm like, well, you're going to make sure you're married first. She says, well, if that's what God wants. I said, no, you decide if you're going to be married first. You have agency. You are the one who decides, hey, you have to marry me before you put baby in me. That has nothing to do with God. Right? So the lack of agency, right, is a problem.
Yeah, and it's a culture, and it's pervasive.
Yes, it is. It's pervasive. And it's become normalized that having children out of wedlock is socially acceptable.
Right.
And part of it is, we saw with Brittany, whatever that woman is, she said, well, it's stepdaddy season. I just get somebody else to be the father. I remember a woman on Kevin Samuel's show, he said, well, listen, if you can't afford to put your children in private school, they won't be able to go to private school. She said, well, I think I'm gonna be able to do it anyway. He said, well, how so? She said, because some men just want to be stepdaddies. Right? They don't respect us. Right. They don't see any value. They don't actually value us. So like I said, these are reasons why if a man hears that, he's gonna say, you know what, absolutely not, I'm good. Like I said, Rebecca Lynn Pope stating, and I could bring it up, where she says, well, we're running circles around men. And then you expect a man to want to be with someone like that. Let's see here. If I could play this. All right, here we go. I'm gonna bring this up, family. So you can see I'm not making this stuff up. And then they wonder why. And this isn't represented. Let's see here. This is Genius reposted this stream. Okay, I give thanks. And then they wonder why they're by themselves.
I always tell women that say that they don't need men, I tell them, next time your car breaks down, make sure you call your girlfriend to come fix it for you.
Right. So check this out.
What do you think the challenge is that women are having, Black women in particular, when it comes to becoming a wife?
Keeping it 100,
yes.
There's not enough eligible Black males who fit the needs of Black women.
And that is a trope, right? Once again, it shows that it's self-serving, right? Because it's all about what they want, not about actually coming together and having a long-lasting, meaningful relationship, right? She said fit the needs of Black women. The second issue is it also is rooted in this form of anti-Black misandry that Dr. T. Hassan Johnson talks about in his book, rooted in this concept that Black men are socially incompetent. Right, I could bring it up here. This is on page, right? Because what we do, family, is informed by scholarship, right? So number 9, social incompetence. The 9th form of anti-Black misandry is social incompetence. Black men are often seen as failed patriarchs or incompetent beings. They are considered almost childlike beings who have to be managed by either dominant white men or strong Black women. From sitcoms to lived experiences, expectations of Black male failure have a deep-seated history in American culture and intra-racially in the African-American community. Tropes regarding failure stem from back to Black men failing to sufficiently resist European slavers, to failing to destroy the very institution of slavery in America. The failure is reinvented almost generationally when Black men suffer from unemployment, heightened incarceration, police-sanctioned murder, and a variety of other issues that prevent them from playing ideal familial roles. right? So let's keep going here. And that's on page 59.
Women. By the time you dissect the demographics of finances, sexual orientation, what you end up drilling down into, because Black women tend to want to marry Black men.
Right.
So Black women are excelling. They're getting accelerated degrees, graduate degrees, doctorate degrees. They're starting businesses. Black women are running circles around men.
Right. So guess what? No man with a modicum of self-respect is going to want to be with a woman who behaves that way. Here's the other issue. A lot of people say, well, Black women had to be, part of it is just, being masculine. Well, Black women had to be masculine. I work in the academy. I come across women of various racial and ethnic backgrounds who have PhDs, and they don't behave that way. They don't behave that way at all.
Mm-hmm.
At all. White, Arab, Latino, Jewish, and what it really comes down to is some form of nominal feminism.
Yep.
That's what's really going on here. So that's the issue, right? And like she stated, well, we're the most degree, but the most degree doesn't mean that you're socioeconomically you're doing well. That's a reality.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
and here's the other thing. I've come in contact with women who would talk down to men if they didn't make a certain amount of money. Dr. C. Hassan Johnson talked about that in his article. Right? So it isn't like there are reasons for why Black women are the last married and the first divorce. And I'm making the argument as a Black man, 41 years, is their behavior. This is not a stereotype. It's a reality. And we've been dealing with it for 3 generations.
Yeah, I can see where that's coming from. Yeah, I don't know.
You don't find any woman on this planet running around talking about, I don't need a man.
Not one.
No, you don't. You don't find any other women on this planet talking about, I'm a strong woman. Right? I remember I was talking to a sister from Ghana once. I said, I was joking. I was being facetious. And I said, are you a strong sister, huh? And she said, I'm a woman. I'm not supposed to be strong. I could be powerful. I could be dynamic, right? But I'm not supposed to be strong. I'm a woman. Don't put that on me. That's masculine. I said, yeah, sister, I was like, I was just joking, but I appreciate the education. I would never say that again. She put me on game. Right. And Dr. C. Hassan Johnson talks about that this concept of the strong Black woman is also rooted in the invisibility of what? Of Black man's masculinity. Yeah. So the women are masculine because the men are effeminate. Once again, which links to what? Social incompetence. Come on, brother. This goes deep.
Yeah. I wonder who is the author of these ideologies. Like, where's it?
Well, a lot of this just comes out of feminism and Black feminist thought.
Oh, okay.
Right, and then you have different, offshoots. You have intersectionality. You have the social construction of identity. You have queer theory, like all of these, and then you have these derivatives that, of course, fall under the umbrella of feminism and Black feminist thought. I, of course, being in the academy, have read the literature, right? But that's where it comes from. With the concept of the disposable male is something that's rooted in feminist thought. That men are disposable, fungible. These are you could treat men like inanimate objects that you could simply replace whenever you feel like.
Yeah.
Right. So like I said, just you can't treat people this way and go out publicly and say this stuff, and then say, I don't understand why I'm by myself. Not only are you tone deaf, you also are solipsism.
Yeah.
Textbook solipsism.
Lost.
And when you hit as he said it in the article, Dr. C. Hassan Johnson, when the women are having these conversations, they never mention what would a man get in return. It's all about what they want. So it's one-sided.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why when I asked the question, I said, you seem to be appropriating structural issues that primarily affect Black men. Oh, no, but, we're linked together. I said, really? I said, if the brother's the one who's his organs are laid out on the ground and he's been deleted by the police, or he's incarcerated for 5 years, he's the one who materially has to deal with that. But you're complaining that you can't get a date.
Uh-huh.
Right? Like, what the French toast is going on here? That's a problem. Or she talked about the welfare system, linked Black women to perpetual singleness. Well, no, it actually provided Black women with benefits while Black men didn't receive state provided benefits.
Yeah, I wonder how many of those brothers are locked up for not paying child support.
Exactly. Right. So, I mean, let's be real here. You're getting state provided benefits, right? Material benefits to provide you housing and food security. The brother doesn't get that.
Right. He has to earn it.
Yeah, he has to earn it.
Mm-hmm.
What are we talking about here?
I don't know.
Yeah, literally. So, and I remember I've watched Kevin Samuel's show. Once again, I have my critiques of him, but he asked a woman, she calls into the show and says, "What do you want?" Her response was, "Well, men don't know what they want." He says, "Well, irregardless or irrespective of if men know what they want or not." Right, the word is regardless, not irregardless, right? What do you want? To be honest with you, I don't know what I want. Right, but the go-to is simply to what? Bash Black men, to speak ill of Black men.
Yeah, well, that's a tendency. That's one of the symptoms of a narcissist. They have a tendency to project their low comings or downfalls on the other person.
Yes.
So they'll say that the Black man don't know what they want, but the truth is they don't know what they want.
They're projecting.
They're projecting.
Yeah,
right,
these are real issues. Real issues. I've dated sisters from the continent, and they're like, I don't know why Black women in America behave this way. Or they would tell me, hey, I got a cousin who moved over there. We don't want to come back home because she's been Americanized, meaning she's out of control.
Yeah, that happens.
Yeah, out of control. Right? And if you say something about the problematic behavior, oh, you're being patriarchal, you're trying to act like a white man. In traditional African societies, everyone is held accountable for everything that they say and do. Right? So now you see this push against structure, this push against actually having a systematic way of doing things. Right? But this actually is an outgrowth, in my opinion, of feminism. Like I said, because I read the feminist literature that argues that structure is an aspect of patriarchy.
Okay.
So what are we talking about here? No man wants chaos in his own home.
Well, civilization can't operate in chaos.
Right, exactly.
That's
you can't
what animals do.
Another thing that we find, and Dr. T. Hassan Johnson has talked about this, is the concept of the husband-son, where women who are credentialed, socioeconomically they're doing well, know that the way they behave, they can't attract a man who's on equal footing. So they will purposely get a man who is basically a hobosexual, be in a relationship with him so that they can what? Verbally and emotionally abuse the guy and make him homeless whenever they want. This is a real issue. Yeah, hobos is called the husband's son, not the son husband, but the husband's son.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely.
Because
once again, if you have a PhD and you're making 6 figures and you meet another brother, he's not going to stand for you acting like you ain't got no damn sense. He's not going to stand for the neck rolling. You ain't going to tell, you ain't going to go for that. When he has the option of getting a woman who is going to be fit, feminine, and cooperative. So they go for the husband son. This is a major issue. Major issue. I've even had women tell me, I can't be with you, you're too smart. Meaning, which actually means I don't want to be with you because I can't manipulate you.
Yeah, basically.
right? We have videos of women going around talking about how men are dumb, men are dumb, men are dumb.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And then they say, I don't understand. I met a sister once and we were talking on the phone and she was like, men are trash, men are horrible. I just hung up on her. So, well, why the hell are you on a dating site if you think men are trash, men are horrible? Right?
Some men are dumb, but that don't mean you got to disrespect the brother.
Right? And the other thing is, how are you going to be in a healthy relationship with someone if you don't think highly of them? So check this out.
What's your favorite thing about black men?
Nothing. Black men suck.
They're
bad. They cheat. They don't care. I'm with the white boys.
What's your favorite thing about black men?
Nothing.
Why say that?
I don't like black men. Not very many meet my standards.
What's your favorite thing about black men?
Nothing. They're just terrible.
Even when you just said that, because I'm thinking about the guest that we just had, she admitted that, her father wasn't a productive father, which I guess justify why she is allowed to say negative things about black men. It's okay for black women to say stuff like that. Like, they will critique a lot of black men sometimes with, oh, you must hate your mother. Like, we get that a lot. You must hate your mother.
But they said it to me, I must hate my mom.
Yeah, like
black women accountable.
When black women have these negative thoughts about black men, nobody says you must hate your father. And it's clearly true.
Yeah.
That one experience can cause you to have a whole hatred towards men. And for some reason that's valid. But when a black man is not allowed to have that same experience with his mom.
Right. So these are the issues that of course we're finding, brothers and sisters. And it's rooted in misandry. Textbook misandry. So just be aware of it. Don't fall for the gaslighting, right? To where all of a sudden now, right, oh, we need to work together, we need to build. They don't believe that. Go get yourself a black woman from the Caribbean or the continent. Seriously, right? We even saw when brothers started engaging in passport bros, became passport bros. Oh, the black men are colonizers, right? Well, was it colonization when Terry McMillan wrote her book that became a movie, How Stella Got a Groove Back? About black women who were 40-something going to the Caribbean and they developing relationships with black men who were in their early 20s or late teens.
Yeah.
You see what I'm talking about here? Yeah. Low-lying contempt. We don't have men who meet our standards, but the reality is a lot of y'all don't meet our standards. 80% of black women are overweight.
Yeah.
So that's going to be an issue. Right? But once again, it's rooted in solipsism, self-centered, it's one-sided, and as I said it before,
I don't mind a woman that's overweight as long as she's not like mostly fat,
Yeah, well.
Or sloppy.
Well, you can have that one because that ain't my thing at all. At all. Because at some point it's gonna fall apart.
Yeah.
Seriously. But family, I appreciate you tapping in, Mr. Sandman. Make sure you hit this like, subscribe, thumbs up. Be a blessing to the show. Make sure you hit the super chat, Cash App, Lumumba Speaks, and of course Venmo at B Lumumba. It's Dr. Bakari K. Lumumba, Virginia, LumumbaSpeaks.com. And until next time, family, y'all know what to do. Always bet on black. Peace. Before you go, make sure you hit the subscribe and like button. Thank you for supporting the channel. And remember, here at Lumumba Speaks, we always bet on black. Peace.